If you believe the battle is won by the strong, you'll be surprised to learn that's all wrong. If you think the race is won by the fastest, you might just come in lastest. To place in this race, you've got to keep pace. So when the running gets rough and you've just about had enough, take a break and draft off us. Today, we're talking about how to win the endurance sports of business, ministry, and life.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Kingdom Builders Academy podcast. We're excited to be with you today, and we're excited for this topic, how to pace for your race. And it's perfect for me and Jillian. It just so happens we are here on vacation. If you can see us on the YouTube, we're in a different location on the same screen in a hotel. So we've got some awesome things to get into about pacing for your race. Like you said, Coach Tam, for business, for ministry, for life. So what's your first take on pacing for your race?
Well, I think that it's really important to recognize, especially for high achievers, that you can't go full out without experiencing burnout. So in order to prevent burnout sort of preemptively, I think it's very important to pace yourself at the rate of peace. As you say, produce at the pace of peace.
Pace of peace.
The pace of peace, that's correct. So one of the things that I do, just as by way of example, is that anytime I have a launch or a speaking event or I'm producing a product, that's a time where you're kind of going full out, but I build in a treat at the end. I build in a little getaway, maybe a little ski trip, or maybe a nature hike, or some kind of little getaway that's going to allow me to sort of recharge and rejuvenate. And I learned early on in doing this kind of ministry, this kind of public ministry, that it's really important to pull back. And we call that the slingshot principle. So when you pull back, it kind of looks like you're losing ground, but really it's positioning you to catapult further, faster, farther than you could before. So pace yourself, produce at the pace of peace.
I love it. I love it, Coach Tam. I've got a few things to share. I think some that are maybe a little more philosophical and because we probably have a lot of philosophical things to share. I want to give something like real practical, tactical that I do, that I've discovered that is really, really helpful. Because here's the thing with burnout and finding that pace of peace. I think burnout, honestly, is like perhaps the number one threat to leaders. I think that's maybe the number one threat to leaders that causes a whole host of problems. I remember I loved NFL Network, all the old NFL stuff when I was a kid. And Vince Lombardi had a quote, "Fatigue will make cowards of us all. Fatigue will make cowards of us all." So you want to talk about moral failure, strategic failure,
Right.
Failure to finish the race. Fatigue will make cowards of us all. So if you don't prepare to pace for your race, if you decide not to take breaks, if you decide not to schedule vacations and schedule whatever kind of time you need, I think you're planning to fail. I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I think it's totally foolish. So here's one thing that I've done that I think has been really helpful in, kind of strategically planning a business schedule, strategically planning a life schedule. Is I think we're so accustomed to kind of the corporate grind of these 4 quarters in a year. You got kind of a 12-week quarter, and then maybe you have a week break, and then we go right into another 12-week quarter, and it's quarter, and it's nonstop. So what we do at Kingdom Builders Academy, what I do with my own kind of life design is I do trimesters. I break it into thirds. And I do 3 months on, 1 month off. And instead of 4 quarters, I got basically 3 quarters. And maybe I'm not going to get as much done in a given year, but I'll tell you, the longevity and the consistency, I think, is the name of the game. And if you can avoid those catastrophic failures strategically in your life, because you're just going at a healthier pace, that is going to make up for any, seemingly lost ground in, oh, I've only got 3 quarters per year instead of 4 quarters per year. It's awesome. It's awesome having basically, I got 3 chunks in the year instead of 4. I think the 4 quarters is a recipe for burnout. So that's one thing I've done to facilitate a healthier lifestyle, business, ministry flow. Honey, what do you think?
Love it. Oh, you did that. Okay, so I was just, whenever I need something smart to say, I just go to Google. So I went to, what did Google tell you? Because Google will tell you some dumb things too. It will. Choose wisely, darling. So I went to Google and it was funny. There was, funny's not the right word. We say funny when it's not even funny. It was interesting. There was this guy and his business was helping people who are business owners help their executives, their executive leadership team prevent burnout. And it was called Sustainable Pace. And I thought it was really interesting because he has all these frameworks. And one of the things he was talking about, and the word draft, Coach Tam, you were saying in the intro there to our Kingdom Builders Academy podcast, draft off of us. Well, that was perfect because this guy talks about, he gives the analogy of like professional cyclist. And that's really the analogy I have in my mind of all of us, because he says, we sometimes get really focused on burnout that we don't think about something called rust out. And I thought that was really good because he said, when we think about pace, sometimes we tend to think that we're going at a continuous miles per hour, almost like we're in a marathon and we're running at 7, 8, 9, 10 miles an hour and we're staying there. So he says, no, that is not the case. He said you really should think about like how a professional cyclist, when they're doing those, like how many miles do you think? Somebody Google it.
Hundreds.
Is there a French one? There's like one in France.
Tour de France.
Tour de France with the name France in it. So how many miles do they go? And it's like over a series of days. So he was just talking about how there are times when they are going up hills where they are really pedaling hard and there's really that big push. But he says the thing is that when they come down, that they don't stop. Like the engine doesn't stall. And he says, and then he gives another analogy. I love analogies. I can't get enough of analogies. He says, think about an engine, even in like the most expensive sports car. If you parked that car for 3 or 4 months, what would happen to the engine? And he talks about rust out. And he says, so just be aware that the moral of my story is, folks, the goal is not to race really hard and like just burn hard and then stop and then rest. He said that the key to sustainability is the ebb and flow. And he said pushing is good for you, just like pushing is good for the engine of a car. It needs that. It was made for it. It was built for it. It's good to have those pushing seasons, those stretches where you're pushing, but that when we come down from that we're not putting ourselves in park, that's not what's happening. And we were talking this morning about Kingdom Builders Academy. When we come off of Kingdom Builders Live and we come off of a launch, we don't just stop cold turkey. Like our business doesn't come to a halt because we need to take a rest. So we said, make sure you understand that it's the ebb and flow of when to push hard. And then kind of when you're still pedaling, you're still in motion, and the balance between the two, that's what makes that pace of sustainability. Do we have something that's sustainable? And just recognizing sometimes we're really leaning in, and then sometimes we're just pedaling to keep the business moving forward. And I thought that was really good.
Yeah,
Are you gonna say something that makes it sound even better?
No, I want to actually keep you in this since we're on the same screen today. We're really gonna share the minutes, because that reminds me of something that I don't think you had to Google this one, honey, but you talk about the difference between work-life balance and work-life integration, right? And that's kind of a similar thing. Like a lot of times, like we think, oh, I need to have work-life balance. It's almost like a hot topic, right? Work-life balance. I'm going to work and then I'm going to, have my life. And when you're running a business, I don't know that it's actually that feasible. It's almost like a misnomer. And a better term is that work-life integration. Can you speak to that about, your work life is your personal life and your personal life is your work life?
Just did it. No, he's right. But I didn't finish this. I just felt like I left it. But the rust out is important. And in this guy, I don't know his name on Google it. You could look it up. He did say that it is really important that once you push hard, that it is very important that your rest doesn't become rust. And I thought that was really interesting. He said, be really careful because that can be really difficult to get out of. And he did say what to do if you do get rust out, which maybe we can come back to. But do you know Coach Tam, who actually shared with me this concept of work-life integration? That's like such a big...
Oh, is that from Coach Tam?
No, I was gonna say, do you know who? Because it's someone that she happens to really know well. And that is our friend, Susie Orman. Susie Orman. I love her. Susie Orman said to me that when she accepted that her work life was her personal life and her personal life was her work life, that a lot of the stress that she carried in trying to balance it all went away. And, I think about a person who is a perfect example, someone else that we know and love, is Dr. Clarice Fluitt, Mimi to us. And you know what? She is a business person in real estate, and she's also a business person in the ministry. And I have been with Mimi, Dr. Clarice, and traveled with her. And it's interesting because I was sitting in a hotel lobby and she had been speaking for 3 days. And I just thought, this is how she, makes her living as well. She travels and she delivers the word of the Lord and she preaches and she teaches. And I thought she's got to be exhausted. And there we are sitting in the lobby. And this, random gentleman is walking through the lobby, and we're sitting there, and he walks by and he sits down near the checkout counter, and she engages him in conversation. Without even thinking, she starts asking him these questions about life, and she goes right into delivering a prophetic word to him. I see it in restaurants. I see it in hotel lobbies. I see it in parking lots. I see it in Ubers. And I thought, what a beautiful example of work-life integration, that when you are doing something you love, when you believe that this is the place that God has called you to, out of that will flow this very, maybe it's a holy pace or an holy ease where, it flows naturally from you. Susie Orman gets stopped everywhere. Everywhere she goes, people have questions. They're seeking advice. And do you know what? It doesn't bother her. It doesn't bother her one bit to share her knowledge, to give her expertise, her wisdom, because her work life is her personal life and her personal life is her work life. Was that right?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, very nicely done. You talked about the racing, and sometimes when I'm out in Colorado, I'll see these guys pedaling up a mountain. And it just looks excruciating to me. I just think to myself, my God, they're in such good shape. They're going to live forever. But if I had to do that, honestly, I think I would rather die early. Like it just looks so difficult. I wanted to add something too on this idea of resting versus rusting. I was reading earlier this week about how Jesus often withdrew to solitary places. And I think there's really a difference between active rest and passive rest. So I'm somebody, and my husband is somebody who is very stimulated by new things and by variety. And so a lot of times when we take a break after our trimester of doing launches and doing things, producing products, etc., we will travel because we like a new backdrop. But as I was thinking about where it says that Jesus often withdrew to solitary places, I thought of how often I've been very blessed and ministered to just to be in nature, to go hiking. And it's an active kind of rest, but there's also something that is very cleansing to the soul, to be in the midst of creation, to be in God's presence, but yet to be there in a solitary way, to be there in a quiet way. And there's two words at the end of this verse where it talks about Jesus withdrawing. It says that Jesus often withdrew to solitary or alone places and prayed. And so there's something about that communion of being in fellowship with God while you're taking a break that is so very restorative to your spirit and to your soul.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like we've been saying, it's essential. It's a non-negotiable, this whole resting thing. And it's just about finding kind of practical ways to do it and making that decision to do it. I'll tell you one thing too, because it's funny. We love masterminds. We love coaching. We're like big believers in it. And I went to like probably 4 business masterminds in a row where my number one challenge in business was personal burnout. Like that was my biggest challenge. And I think one of the things that led to that was really just like, I'm going to make up my mind and make a decision, is about enjoying the journey, and that's again, that whole work-life balance thing. Like, oh, I've got my work where I really push to hit goals. And then I got my life that I really enjoy. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be integrated, that like, we love what we do. Because here's what I've slowly discovered is it's all about the journey. Like life is a journey, and the journey is the destination, right? The journey itself is the destination. Like, yes, we have like a heavenly reward, and we 100% push for that and are motivated by that and like have that ambition, right? Like Paul talked about, like we should have an ambition for our heavenly reward. But this journey, this life, and especially in the context of business, it's not about the destination all the time. Like it's so much about the journey. I remember when I was 16, I think for my 16th birthday, me and my dad climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And I was excited for it, for the destination, to say, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, to get to the top and put my hands in the air and be super excited. And you know what happened is we did the 5-6 days up the mountain. And the last day where we had to push for the summit, I was miserable. I had altitude sickness. It was overcast. I got to the top and I just wanted to get down. And the summit, the destination, was the worst part of the whole trip. And I had to like process it after the fact. Like, what was the point of that? That was not worth it. That was terrible. And it was the journey. It was the 5 days up the mountain. It was beautiful. It was quality time. It was amazing, the journey. But I didn't have that perspective on the journey. I was just like, I'm going to summit. I'm going to summit Kilimanjaro. I'm going to get to the destination. It's going to be amazing. Then you get there and it's not, right? And how often do we see that happen to people? That they push for decades, right? To conquer an industry, to conquer goals. And they get there and it's like that, it's cool for like 2 weeks. And then it's like, now what? And then then you realize like, oh, I just wasted like 30 years like pushing for some destination that wasn't where it's at. Like where it's at is the journey. So I think, in just having a better perspective on the work that we do can help. Like it should be fun.
Yeah, enjoying the journey for sure. And, we've talked a lot about rest here and kind of pulling back, but I do want to talk a little bit about pacing yourself for the push too. Because if all we do is pull back and rest to avoid burnout, then we're going to have a hard time accomplishing the things that God has called us to do. So here's what the scriptures say. The scriptures say is that we should be led by the Spirit. And I think that God has even created our physical body, something in the DNA of our structure, the way that He's created it, is there are sort of ebbs and flows in our energy. Some of us are more energized in the morning, some in the afternoon, some in the evening. He's created the human framework to sleep as well, and to wake up and to do your day. And I think if you put it in that context, when you think about your race and pacing yourself to win the race, because that's the idea, is we want to win the race. Paul said, I don't I don't fight as one beating the air. I don't run aimlessly. I run with purpose in every stride. And so I think that it is wisdom to use these ebbs and flows of energy to get things done. So if you are most creative or you are most productive at a certain time of the day, then clear the space and make that time the time that you focus. There are going to be times in life where you just feel sort of fatigued. And usually that's a symptom of burnout, and it's an indication that you do need to rest. But when you're not feeling that, then that's the time to really press in. That's the time to really push to be productive. And so many people waste their productivity energy on procrastinating. And that's draining. Like, it really does take a lot of energy to procrastinate and to worry about the fear of failure or worry about perfecting everything. Oh, it has to be perfect before I do anything. No, it doesn't. That's an illusion. There's no such thing as perfection. We're just going to have to do, messy as it is, to birth something. And when you think about the natural birth process, it's messy. It is. It's not a pretty sight, but it's bringing forth life. And so I do want to encourage you and to challenge you is to use those times where you're feeling clear, you're feeling energetic, to really press for the project that God has put in your heart. Don't just dream about it. You got to do about it. You can't just talk about it. You got to be about it. You really have to do the thing that God has called you to do. If you don't, it's only going to stay a dream and you'll die with your dreams. That's the unfortunate truth.
Yeah, so true. I love it. Honey, anything to add?
Oh, yes. Okay, so this guy on Google, I just love this. He said, if you get in a place of rust out, where you feel like you're stalling and you go to start your engine and it won't quite turn over, he said the worst thing that you could do in that moment is tackle something big. He said, whatever you do, stay away from some big overwhelming, like, oh, I'm going to have to learn how to edit this week. This is a bad idea, my friend. We are not learning how to edit when we've been in a stage of rust out. He said, what you need to do is quickly find a small task that you can accomplish pretty much reasonably right away. He said, because it will help put you back into a place of momentum. And he said, it releases those endorphins, that feeling of like, I can do this. I can do this. And then he said, then you build on that. He said, so don't try to, eat an elephant one bite at a time. He said, find something small and then tackle it. And I thought that was great advice, because I think sometimes when we do get out of momentum in anything in life, to get back in, the idea of, I picture like double dutch, jump rope. Did you ever double dutch, Coach Tam, when you were little?
I did. I could double dutch, baby.
I bet you could.
Darling.
Okay, but listen, I could not. Here's what I was good at. I was really good at doing the 2 jump ropes, but I did have to go to like a zone. Okay, I would get in the zone and I was like glazed over.
You were the jump rope spinner.
I was the jump rope spinner. And I was very good at that. And I just distinctly remember that being like in 6th grade, and my friend Shelly being really good at jumping, but I was not. But I do remember looking at the faces of those friends who were waiting to get in. And it was like each rope was swinging. And it was like, when do I jump in? When do I jump in? And I just thought, that's how I felt so overwhelmed that I was like, I will not be jumping in. I will just be swinging the ropes. But I thought about how that's how it can feel too when you're in a state of rust out or a state of stalling, that to lean back into that could feel overwhelming. So don't allow overwhelm to overtake you, but instead find something small that you can accomplish and check it off the list to get you back into momentum.
Jump with one rope. Or, I had... No, and I got these. I bought these things. These were something that was like an infomercial, and it was handles, but they had little balls on the end. And you did this and you jumped, so you would never get smacked by the rope, but you had the jump rope motion going and these little balls are spinning. It was awesome. I loved it.
That is fantastic.
It was a great little gimmick.
Oh man, I love it. Edwina, she was really great at double Dutch. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Don't allow overwhelm to overtake you. Amen.
Yeah, we got great comments in the live chat here from our members. So let's wrap there. I mean, I know we're going to come back to burnout in a few weeks and have more to share about how to banish burnout. But for now, pacing for your race, just be intentional about it. Be intentional about it. Understand the principles, like you talked about, Coach Tam, the slingshot principle. We didn't even get into like the Sabbath, right? Like it was a commandment, right? It's part of the process. So you just got to do it. And I think we shared some really helpful perspectives today. So love this episode of the Kingdom Builders Academy podcast with you guys. We're going to take some questions from our members now. See you guys next week.